Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. This is the Excerpt. Today, the latest surrounding the accused killer of Brian Thompson, plus how Elon Musk has shaken things up in a part of South Texas, and black plastic utensils aren't as dangerous as a study suggested. The man accused of fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson earlier this month is facing upgraded murder charges in New York, officials announced yesterday. Luigi Mangione was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder in furtherance of terrorism and 2 counts of second-degree murder, including a count of murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said the crime in its most basic terms was a killing that was intended to evoke terror. Prosecutors say Mangione arrived in New York City 10 days ahead of Thompson's murder, but used a fake identification card and mask to avoid being recognized. Elon Musk and SpaceX have changed a corner of Texas. For the better or worse? I called up USA Today national correspondent Rick Jervis to discuss. Rick, thanks for hopping on today.
Happy to be here.
Rick, let's start by talking a little about how and when Elon Musk and SpaceX came into the equation in this part of Texas, and really what does the company use the area for?
So this happened about a decade ago. Back in 2014 was when they first said that they were going to move here to South Texas. They didn't physically move in here until starting around 2021. But it's this area east of Brownsville, Texas. And Brownsville is way at the very bottom of South Texas. It's like the southernmost city in Texas. It sits right on the border across from like Matamoros, Mexico. That's nothing but really tidal flats out there. It's like a big delta. And there was nothing but open acreage out there. And Elon Musk and SpaceX came in, bought up about 350 acres worth of the property. And they have built this really large, sprawling, the only word used to really describe it is impressive, huge complex out there, which is where they basically designed, built, and launched all these rockets going into outer space.
And Rick, what are some of the positives that supporters say the company has brought to Boca Chica and this surrounding area?
I talked to a lot of people down there, and I would say most of them really do support it and say that the complex has brought a lot of jobs into the area. We basically visited this one bar down there called the Hopper House. Hopper was one of the first rockets that Elon Musk fired into space. And the owner there was basically telling me just how much his business has grown since SpaceX operations started. And his bar gets so filled with people during launches, and he's even expanding it to like sort of include more and more people. According to numbers given to Cameron County down there by SpaceX, SpaceX has basically generated more than $800 million in like direct and indirect taxes to local and state government, has drawn more than $99 million in tourism to the region, and created about 3,400 jobs. So it's a pretty significant impact.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. So, you do outline some of the criticisms you heard from some folks in the local community. What did you hear? What are some of their biggest concerns?
Some of the folks down there are like really, really concerned mostly about the environmental impact down there. Boca Chica is a bird sanctuary. There's a lot of migratory birds passing through there. They're like mostly concerned that SpaceX and Elon Musk are cutting corners and not exactly mitigating for a lot of the environmental impacts down there. Now, SpaceX really pushes back on that, and they claim that they have been mitigating for environmental impacts, that they've been working closely with the EPA and other agencies, and that they've even partnered with some local environmental groups such as Sea Turtles Inc. to try to mitigate impacts on things like sea turtles down there and shorebirds and other things.
Rick, I know you also outlined some issues potentially pertaining to indigenous tribe restrictions. Can you talk through some of those issues?
Yeah, we actually spoke down there with a member of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe of Texas. I'd say it's like a relatively unknown tribe nationally, but down there, they are actually from there originally. They basically claim that the area around where SpaceX is their spiritual and historical origin. They often go down to the beach to perform different ceremonies and like traditional offerings and prayers. And since SpaceX closes off like the one access road down there, it's called Highway 4. SpaceX closes off the highway every time that there's a launch or a testing. The tribe, they feel they have been curtailed in their like ability to get to the beach and to perform a lot of these things. So they and others recently filed a lawsuit against the FAA, actually claiming that the FAA is not properly monitoring SpaceX's like activity.
We're entering a really a new era potentially, Rick, with this new Trump term and White House. We know Elon Musk and Trump have cozied up in recent months and years. What's the expectation for next year and beyond, and what influence, I guess, this new Trump term could have on the area?
That's actually one of the big questions that a lot of people are asking. Some of the watchdog groups, some environmental groups are asking, since Elon Musk is going to be playing, it looks like a pretty strong advisory role to the Trump administration. And he's going to be basically tasked with bringing down government waste and making government smaller. How is that going to impact some of the very federal agencies that is charged with overseeing some of his activity? There's a lot of questions surrounding that. SpaceX recently was actually fined by the FAA. The FAA is like the one agency keeping really close tabs on him. What happens if Elon Musk starts to downsize the FAA? Does it actually create a conflict of interest? I talked with one watchdog group that says that they are going to be looking at this very, very closely.
Interesting stuff. There's lots more in Rick's piece. Listeners can find the full version with a link in today's show notes. Rick Jervis is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thank you, Rick.
Happy to be here.
At vigils across Madison, Wisconsin last night, residents gathered together to mourn and begin to process Monday's shooting at Abundant Life Christian School. The violence left a student and a teacher dead, with several others critically injured. Some at the vigils were closely tied to the school community, some were not, but they were united in deep pain over the tragedy that had unfolded. Madison police said yesterday that a combination of factors motivated the deadly shooting. Authorities say a 15-year-old girl opened fire Monday morning in a classroom before dying on the way to a local hospital from what police believe to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police originally said a second grader made the first 911 call reporting an active shooter, but corrected an earlier statement in a news conference yesterday saying a second grade teacher had actually made the call. It's rare for school shooters to be female, according to the data and experts who study such incidents. Of 544 school shooting incidents over an 11-year period, less than 5% of the shooters were female, according to Everytown for Gun Safety, a nonprofit group that advocates for stronger gun laws. The group noted that the gender of the shooter is not always available, so data is incomplete. A recent study found black plastic kitchen tools had high levels of toxins, but researchers admit they overestimated the risk. I spoke with USA Today national correspondent Elizabeth Weiss for the latest. Thanks for hopping on again today, Beth.
Happy to be here.
So, what did this initial study find about the dangers of these plastics?
So, if you were like some of our listeners, like me, and you threw out all your black plastic kitchen utensils when this paper came out, maybe you didn't need to, but maybe you did. So, here's the deal. Earlier this month, this paper comes out in the journal Chemisphere, which generated a lot of concern. So, black plastic kitchen utensils, like usually they're spatulas, and also the black plastic trays that you say get sushi on at the supermarket. They tested them and they found that some of them, not all of them, but a few of them, had pretty high levels of brominated flame retardants and organophosphate flame retardants. And you're thinking, well, how the heck did flame retardants get in these things? Because it's pretty darn rare that your sushi container goes up in smoke. But it turns out that they are made from, which we like, recycled plastic, so that's all beautiful, except that black plastic, when it's recycled, often comes from the housing that goes around like the back of your television or in electronics. And because those can heat up and they could be a fire danger in the home or the office, they do contain flame retardants. And sometimes they contain flame retardants that are actually banned in the United States. So what these researchers found is that when this black plastic gets recycled, some of it ends up, we're presuming inadvertently, in the plastic used to create these kitchen utensils and takeout containers. So they tested them, and then they found these disturbingly high levels of flame retardants in some of them.
And Beth, it now turns out they miscalculated. How so, and what have we learned since?
Yeah, this is why I am not a scientist. So it's a complex calculation. So the EPA sets levels for, it's called the reference dose, and it's how much of a chemical is considered to be potentially safe to consume. And it's a pretty complex calculation that you have to do, but the upshot is they potentially figured that if you used one of these black plastic kitchen utensils, you could conceivably get, if you used it in hot food, about 34,000 nanograms of these contaminants. And they said, if you look at, say, a typical 132-pound person, which is 60 kilos, they calculated that the reference dose would be around 42,000 nanograms. However, they made a math mistake, and it was actually 420,000 nanograms, which meant that these things were actually had 10 times less of these flame retardants in them than they had calculated. And they pretty quickly issued a correction, which, because this is how the scientific process works, the journal published the correction to the paper and it went out everywhere.
So, Beth, what does this really functionally mean for our kitchens and these devices? Is there any reason still to worry, or are we kind of out of the clear?
Well, so here's the deal. You don't want to be eating flame retardants. I mean, nobody's saying that flame retardants are not something that you shouldn't be consuming. And there's a lot of good research. It's been in the Journal of the American Medical Association that high levels of flame retardants can cause cancer. So we don't want flame retardants in our food. The level of flame retardants that you might get from these items made from recycled materials is less than they had calculated. Interestingly, while the EPA has banned some flame retardants because they're considered too dangerous, there are no levels set for recycled materials. So better safe than sorry. I mean, switch to silicone. I mean, the problem with silicone is it doesn't have quite the same strength. Like I had my favorite pancake turner that was just exactly perfect, but it's now gone. So I have to find something to replace it. Would I buy black plastic? I probably at this point wouldn't buy something that would heat up. Like sushi, that's not hot, but you should never ever be reheating things in the microwave in plastic. You just shouldn't. Put it on a plate. I know it's a hassle. You have to wash the plate. Put it on a plate anyway.
Elizabeth Weiss is a national correspondent with USA Today. Great breakdown for us, as always. Thank you, Beth.
You're so welcome.
What word had moviegoers buzzing in 2024? Sequels. From Inside Out 2 to Gladiator 2, Hollywood racked up big wins with the tried and true. With the 2023 Hollywood strikes in the rear view, was Hollywood able to come roaring back this year? Listen here beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time today when USA Today entertainment reporter Ralphie Aversa joins my colleague Dana Taylor to talk about some of Hollywood's biggest hits and misses of the year. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.